Hey team, the purpose of this presentation is to talk to you about some reliable online research strategies. So here are some points to consider. When you are using a particular website, it might be profitable to examine the name of that specific website. Now, not all websites are helpful or reliable, and it's helpful to take that into consideration when you're looking at websites. Another thing to consider is who is the author. If a website does not have an author, it's not always a red flag. It's not always a situation where you should stay away from that resource, but sometimes that is a helpful thing to take into consideration. Another thing that you should pay attention to is when was it published. If something was published 25 years ago, my recommendation is look for something that might be newer, that would be more relevant, something that's going to have more up-to-date content in it. So sometimes if you can find the published date, I recommend paying attention to that. Here's another thing to consider. Are there any typos or grammatical errors inside of the article? If you don't have a team of people who are reviewing that content, it could raise some questions as to whether or not that resource is reliable. So those are just a few points to consider. They're not all instantaneously red flags, but they are things that you might want to consider when you're looking at resources. Now, Google Scholar is something that's going to be far above elementary and junior high resources, but there might be some high school students out there that find that Google Scholar is a good resource. You might not gravitate to it frequently. However, I did want you to just pay attention to that as a resource. Now, the item on the screen right here specifically says Google Scholar, but on the next screen, when I'm talking to you about search strategies, it doesn't matter that it's Google Scholar. These are just strategies that you would use when searching in Google normally. So on the screen here, I have a minus symbol in front of specific words. For the purpose of this presentation, I'm pretending that I'm doing an opinion research paper to determine whether or not Oreo cookies are healthy for you. So I don't want stuffed, I wouldn't call it a stuffed animal, but I wouldn't want a toy of some kind. And I don't want information that's going to come from a blog, from someone who is a blogger. And then WordPress is an example of a blog website. If you want to design a website or a blog, you can go to WordPress. So I don't necessarily want those resources for this research. So you can put minus toys, minus animals, minus clothing, to make sure that you avoid specific things in your search query. Other tools and tricks to use when doing research, you can notice over here on the left where it says anytime. And you can narrow your search results down to the past year, the past month, the past week, the past 24 hours. You can look for information that fits exactly what you're looking for. So if there was an earthquake or a natural disaster in Haiti 15 years ago, but you're curious about the one that happened 6 months ago, then you can narrow down your search results to make sure that you are saving time and energy by choosing a specific time frame. Also up at the top it says images. So if you're looking specifically for images, then you can click on images and only find images. You also have tools inside images, so that if you want to find a large format image instead of a small image, you can actually make those specifications when you are searching as well. So here are some of the results that came back on whether or not Oreo cookies are healthy. And on this screen, I just want to draw your attention to the the green words that you see underneath those titles, because a few slides from now, I'm going to have you pay more attention to that in just a little bit. If you choose to use magazines or newspapers as a research tool, I'm going to show you several different screens that are going to point you to news publications like that. On the middle of the screen, you'll notice that long rectangle that says results from time.com. In order to save yourself some time, you can actually type your search query into that box right there and then press enter on your keyboard, and it's going to search inside Time magazine for you. So when I did that, these are some of the results that came back. And then when I chose to click on one of those, this is the one that I chose. And you'll notice that it has the name of the website. It has the title of the article. It shows me the author's name right there on the screen. And then underneath the author's name, it also shows a date. So March 11, 2017. So if my teacher has said, look for articles that have an author, look for articles that have a publication date, make sure that date is somewhat relevant, well then this has satisfied all of those requirements as I am searching. It would be my obligation and responsibility to read through the article to determine whether or not it's helpful for me, but if that's what I'm supposed to look for, well, I just found those things. The Sacramento Bee would be a newspaper. If that is a resource that your teacher has said that is acceptable for this research that you're doing, then feel free to do that. And you'll notice that long rectangle in the middle of the screen all over again. In order to save yourself some time, my recommendation is to search directly inside of that box, and it's going to comb through the Sacramento Bee for the words that you have selected. On the screen in front of you, not the first one, not the second one, but the third one, it says go with the gut. Then I want to draw your attention to the green letters right underneath there. In my opinion, this is a huge time saver. When you pay attention to what that website address actually is, you can quickly ignore the ones that are an absolute waste of your time. So this one starts with jobs.sacb.com. Now, I'm not going to promise you 100% that this is an article that you should stay away from, but one of the first things that comes to my mind is, I wonder if somebody wants me to apply for a job by using this particular web link, and maybe they're trying to sell me some products and tell me how amazing their job is, and then I'm supposed to apply for it at the bottom. I'm not going to know until I officially click on that, but if I need to save time, I'm short on time, I need to get my research done, that might be a resource that I'm going to skip, and then I'm going to move on to the next one. So team, when you're doing research, I recommend that you pay attention to those green letters that live underneath the title of those websites, because in the end, that could probably save you some time. Here is the Washington Post. I've already talked about the long rectangle in the middle of the screen. Sometimes the long rectangle works and sometimes it doesn't. In this situation it did. I could scan this. And then you'll also notice underneath the green letters, like I mentioned on one of those previous screens, that you have a tiny synopsis or an overview of just a few concepts in there. And you'll also see how there are certain words that have been highlighted. I recommend that you skim the page, that you scan it to kind of look for some of those keywords that are important to you. That's another time saver when it comes to doing research. Here we go with the Chicago Tribune, another publication. When I tried to use the search query box on that last page, it wouldn't let me do that. It forced me to go straight to the website. And then you'll notice how I have an arrow at the top of the screen. The arrow is pointing me to the search box inside of that website. So if the long rectangle on the Google search page doesn't work for you, then be on the lookout for the magnifying glass inside that website, and then use that magnifying glass and then type your search query into that box, press enter, and then hopefully you'll be able to find some articles inside of that website using that resource instead. Fox News is another publication that's going to give you some quality resources, some up-to-date current event information, and sometimes news articles also have opinion pieces as well. So when you're reading through any article, always double check for any resource if it's fact-based or opinion-based. These are just some of the major news publications that I wanted to push out to you. The New York Times is another resource. You can just do a Google search for the New York Times or any of the other resources that I've mentioned, and then you'll notice how the web address is on the screen in front of you. They're not hyperlinks, these are pictures, unfortunately, but feel free to use any of those publications. The Washington Post is another resource that you can use to look for up-to-date relevant information. Encyclopedia.com might be a resource that's helpful for you as well. You might be limited on the resources that are available to you. Some resources make you pay a subscription or have a membership or things of that nature. So you'll just have to check on your own to see whether or not that is a resource where you have access to quality information. And then a resource that came available to us in Clovis Unified in 2018 is Britannica Digital Learning, and you can find that in Clever. So when I'm done with this presentation, please head over to Clever and then click right there where it says Britannica. It's also available in Spanish, so if that is an easier resource for you to use, you'll notice how we have both of those right next to one another. Inside Britannica, you'll notice that there's elementary, middle, and high levels of reading. Choose the one that is perfect for you, and if you don't know which one is perfect, then just jump right in and use one of them, and then you'll eventually figure it out. There is a search box. You'll notice how my arrow is pointing to the search box. You would type in your search query right there. For example, if you're researching Rosa Parks or Martin Luther King, or if you are studying microbiology or cellular division or intermolecular hydrogen bonding, whatever your topic of study is, simply type that idea into the search box and then press enter. On the next screen, you'll see how there are 3 different levels of complexity. Another word for complexity would be difficult. If you want content that is easy, you would choose level 1. If you want something that's a little bit more complicated, choose level 2 or level 3. Choose whatever is perfect for you. On the screen in front of you, you'll see how there are a few articles up at the top. You'll see how there are some images and some video content down at the bottom. On the left-hand side, in the menu bar, you'll see how articles has been selected. Underneath articles, it says images, videos, dictionary, and magazines. You have different types of content available to you for free here inside Britannica. I moved my arrow over here to that menu to kind of show you where that is. If you were to click on any one of those resources, it's going to let you know what whether or not you're going to head to the advanced level or if you want to go to the elementary level of that content. So just make that choice and then head into the article when you're ready. On the top right-hand side of most articles, you will find each of these buttons located over here. The plus and the minus button will increase or decrease the size of the letters on the screen to make it easier for you to see. The speaker button is going to read that content out loud to you. The globe is going to show you other online content. The little check mark right here is going to allow you to copy and paste your citation. This is important. Your teacher is going to let you know the standards that he or she has set for you, but ultimately when you borrow information from somebody else, you need to give them credit for their hard work. So your teacher might say that you need a citation page or a bibliography or a reference page, and you need to cite, you need to give credit where you borrowed some of that information, where somebody taught you something amazing and you want to celebrate their hard work. So that's where you would find that citation information. If you want to save any of that content in your favorites, then you would need to sign in. Sign in with Google, please. And then once you sign in with Google, then you can store that content in your favorites. you would use that little curved arrow right there in that menu bar on the right, and then I recommend that you click the little star that says Favorite. Google Classroom works best for teachers, but it's not designed to work for students. So you would not send that off to Google Classroom. Your teacher would send that off to Google Classroom. Whenever you store anything in your favorites, you'll notice up at the top my arrow is pointing to My Content. Once you click on My Content, then you will be able to find where you have stored all of those amazing, fantastic, wonderful resources so that you can find them later. It's always nice when you can save some time and come back to those resources later. Inside Britannica, you have access to articles, media, biographies, World Atlas. You can compare countries. You can tour the USA. You also have other information as you search those different menus and categories. An amazing wealth of knowledge. Up at the very top of the screen, I don't have an arrow pointing to the search box. I actually have the stick portion of the arrow covering the search box. But right up there, you can change your search query and then look for something else up at the top. That little magnifying glass right there in that box would allow you to search for something different. Team, thank you so much for paying attention to this presentation today. I hope that you enjoy Britannica just as much as I do. This is a fantastic resource. I hope that you enjoy the process of researching. Researching is absolutely phenomenal, and I trust that you're going to learn a wealth of knowledge through this and similar processes. Team, have a great day.